What's up everyone, Nan Man here, and in this video we're going to talk about how to build a cube. Alright, so there are 5 different steps that we're going to go over when it comes to constructing a cube in Magic the Gathering. It's just kind of the nice simple guidelines for helping new players kind of get into this, because it is a whole process of kind of becoming a game designer essentially. That's really what it comes down to when you start making your own cube. So step 1, the easiest way to think about it in my mind is come up with a theme that you want to follow when you are building this cube, right? Is your cube going to be powered? Is it going to be a pauper cube full of commons? Is your theme going to be related to a specific block, like block constructed? You know, these sort of ideas that you come up with will help get the players an idea initially. Oh, this is a Ravnica cube, so I know what to expect going into it. Right? When they sit down, they go, all right, these colors are going to be doing specific stuff more or less because of this idea I have. If you just say, oh, it's a powered cube, they know I'm going to get some really powerful cards. If you're going to be giving them a pauper cube, you're still getting powerful cards, but they know, oh, I'm not going to be finding, you know, a bunch of rares in my pack. It's going to be a bunch of commons that I'm going to have to synergize together to make this work. So that's kind of that initial first step of what you should be doing. Start brainstorming that idea of how to start up your cube. Number 2, or step number 2 in this process, would be deciding on the size of your cube. So the kind of baseline stuff that we usually go by is that 360, 480, 540. You can always go all the way up to 720. That's the amount of cards that are inside the cube. Sizes can be flexible, right? You don't have to be set in stone saying, well, I need to follow these guidelines. It has to be at least 360. Not necessarily. So most cubes are designed for an 8-person draft. So if you're thinking that in mind, okay, I need at least enough cards to fit into a 15-card pack. I need 3 of those per each player, right? You can do a bunch of math and figure out that kind of numbers in that regard. That's where we get to around that 360 or so. If you're not going to be drafting with 8 people, don't feel worried that you need that. You can sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to run a 240 size cube because I get 4, maybe 6 people maximum, but I never get up to 8 people to draft with me. So I don't need a huge cube. So one rule of thumb to keep in mind is that when you're starting out, start out small. It's easy to build up and increase the size, increase the strategies, all that kind of things that you want to do. But starting out small lets you tailor things a little bit easier. It's much more manageable to go with. Another rule of thumb to keep in mind is that the smaller the cube, the more likely that you're going to see specific cards or specific strategies. As the cube gets larger, you're going to need more cards that are going to synergize with those specific strategies that you've come up with. All right, step number 3, which this is probably my favorite part of it, is deciding what your cube's color identity is going to be, right? Is green going to be about ramp or +1/+1 counters? Is white all about enchantments, or are you going to be doing something like counter or tokens, that is? So you have to decide how you want to kind of build your stuff. I like to try to keep it in line with rule number 1 of whatever my color identities relate back to whatever my theme is, right? So if I'm saying, okay, I have a block constructed, then I know that these colors need to fit this parameter in this block. If I'm doing a Khans of Tarkir one, I know that there's going to be Abzan stuff that is dealing with those +1 counters instead of it just being like a Simic dealing with +1 counters if I was doing a Ravnica, right? So your theme can matter in how you tweak this number 3 in this regard. I'm going to break down in upcoming episodes, because I'm going to do multiple parts for this, about kind of what my color identities for my cube that I have. So you'll be able to see this kind of all this information kind of firsthand as we go forward. But let's jump into step number 4. Step number 4 is that play test phase, right? So any good game designer needs to be play testing their product, right? Their game. The cube is like your game that you've created, right? So did the combos work that you put in there? Are they too slow? Are they dying to all the aggro decks that you also have in the cube? Did you decide, you know what, I'm done with aggro, nobody gets to play aggro anymore, right? Is the power level between colors balanced? Does everyone want to draft a specific color? Is everyone drafting all the aggro decks because it's winning all the matches? Because all the other strategies are too slow. So you have to be able to start play testing and finding those answers out, right? Which kind of step 4 and step 5 pretty much go together, but let's kind of quickly shift gears into 5, which is that reworking your cube. After that play test phase, you're supposed to be getting that feedback, finding out, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what do I need to change, how do I need to adjust things, what strategies did work, which ones didn't, what cards am I taking out, what cards am I putting in. This is that rework phase where a lot of players will go through. If you're finding certain cards are getting last picked a lot of times in your cube, or they're not even going into players' decks, then something's up with those cards and they should probably be removed from the cube. Right? If you're like, oh, I'm keeping this in for this one very niche thing, that's cool. But if you have a very large cube, it's very hard for that niche thing to work. So you have to keep that in mind when, again, doing this kind of rework phase. The other thing is some players will update their cubes, after every set, after every year, right? To be like, well, let's see if there are any new cards that came out that I like that I can replace maybe this one red card, or I'm going to replace this one blue card now because there's this new card that came out that does this, but just slightly better than what I was doing before. And try to keep it with your theme if you want. It's flexibility. That's the fun thing about Cube is you're designing it. You get to decide how it works out, right? I have revitalized my Cube a little bit of times, more of just tweaking strategies, right? Because my Cube that I am doing is my Ravnica Cube. So it's very rigid in what the Cube can do and what cards can be included is how I've felt about it. But again, I'll talk more about that going forward. But let me know what if you guys have come up with your own cubes, what sort of themes you have. Are there specific color identities that you like? Were there specific sets that came out that you were like, I need to add a bunch of these into my cube because of how cool these cards are? All right, so let me know what you guys think about this sort of video. We're going to be doing more videos like this as we kind of highlight and dive into my cube and hopefully seeing some of your guys' cubes. But thanks for tuning in and watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next game. Hey everyone, Nan here. I'm a StarCraft 2 and Magic the Gathering content maker and commentator. Thanks for tuning in and watching, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and check the description for more information about other content that I'm doing. I've also got a new podcast, Nan Man's Nerd Corner, which you guys can find out on Spotify or iTunes. It's got a bunch of Magic content as well as other stuff. Thanks for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you guys next game.